NXT, the third brand in WWE. What once used to be a place that was developmental for the main roster has now become a brand that can stand on its own. Things don't happen overnight. It takes a group of hardworking individuals to make it something really special. Asuka, Ember Moon, Kairi Sane, Peyton Royce. Those are just some of the names you think of when you think of NXT in 2017 and the women's division. Before this, however, there were 4 women who were blazing a trail in NXT. Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, and Bayley. Unfortunately for Bayley, her time on WWE Raw hasn't been great. Today, we're going to look at what went wrong with Bayley. If you were going to sum up what Bayley's character is supposed to be, it's simple. Bayley is what Hulk Hogan was to kids, but to little girls. Bayley grew up a lifelong WWE fan and only ever wanted to be a pro wrestler. NXT was a place for Bayley to shine. She started out the nice, good, wholesome girl who gave out her headband, but never won the big one. She would go out there time and time again, have great matches, but when it came to the NXT Women's Championship, she would fall short. It wasn't until Emma told her that she was being too nice and slapped her in the face that she kicked it up a notch. This was a key moment because if you remember, Emma had gone up to the main roster and was sent back down to NXT. She knew what it was like, and being nice really didn't do her any favors on Raw. This was wise advice. During this feud with Emma, Bayley took a short break to recover on a wrist injury, but came back stronger than ever. Upon her return, we could see that she was still fun-loving, but also had an edge to her in the ring. She would then go on to win the NXT Women's Championship at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn against Sasha Banks, and then go on to main event NXT TakeOver Respect in a 30-minute Iron Man match. Bayley would even feud with the likes of Eva Marie, Alexa Bliss, Carmella, and Nia Jax, and she eventually lost the championship to the most dominant wrestler in all of NXT, Asuka, at TakeOver Dallas. She would get a rematch, but was unsuccessful capturing it back. This would end her time in NXT. She then made a surprise debut at Battleground 2016 as the partner to Sasha Banks. Then, in August 22nd, 2016, she made her debut on Monday Night Raw. This is where things go downhill for her. Before we talk about her Raw time, we need to look back at what made her successful in NXT. First off, NXT is a much smaller platform with 1 hour of television a week and usually 1, maybe 2 women's segments on it. Usually, this would mean that you would get featured almost every other week. This is not a bad thing. The reason this is positive is because you can build long-term stories and get to see the characters grow. With Bayley in NXT, we saw this little girl grow into a woman. She was nice, fun-loving until she was slapped in the face. She realized if she wants to win the big championship, she needed to put her game face on and show a mean streak. This is a solid story. It works. Everyone can relate and everyone can get behind it. She made a believer out of me. At first I thought she was bland, but over time I grew to love her character and hoped that she would get her break. People love a great underdog story, and Bayley was the epitome of this. But when she came to the main roster, it was almost like they hit a reset button. WWE was acting like it's all the time in NXT didn't matter. Sure, they mentioned it on TV, but all the hard work that she did to grow her character was erased. She had a few chances at the Raw Women's Championship, but didn't win. It seemed like the fire that was lit under her in NXT was gone. Eventually, she would go on to win the Raw Women's Championship on an episode of Raw, but it wasn't without the help of Sasha Banks. It seemed as if she couldn't do it on her own. And this was true because she then retained her championship from another distraction by Sasha Banks. She would go on to have a fatal 4-way match at WrestleMania and eventually lose it to Alexa Bliss. This program with Alexa Bliss would be one of the worst in not only her career, but WWE. Alexa Bliss held a This Is Your Life segment, making fun of how pathetic Bayley's life was. Alexa made fun of her ex-boyfriend and brought out her ex-best friend, and they ended up making out on TV. It was a really weird segment. They basically made fun of Bayley because she was a nerd who liked wrestling growing up. Not a good message to send to the people who watch WWE regularly. She didn't capture the championship back or get retribution for being made fun of, so this ultimately buried her. I don't like to use that word lightly, but they made her look like she was a chump. She ended up getting a shoulder injury and never got another shot at the championship, being sidelined from action. She's back in WWE now after injury, but it's all too much of the same. She is just getting by week to week, nothing important. In 2015, Bayley had magic on her hands. She was a shy little girl who became a strong female role model. The story was so simple and it worked perfectly. You love seeing the growth of characters over time, and this was as good as it gets. She finally looked comfortable in her skin and in that ring. She was putting on A+ matches and even main eventing NXT takeovers. When she came to Raw, it seemed like she was getting a reset. Forget everything you just saw. I think they wanted to retell the same story they had in NXT, but got lazy halfway through. It was like seeing a bad remake, only to know the director of the new one just didn't really care. Bayley is a great wrestler and could be a great character if they knew what to do with her. If it was me, I would take all this sloppy storytelling and use it as a positive. Have her break and be upset that she isn't women's champion. Put over NXT as her golden era, remember the fire she had, and get back to that point. She could be the female John Cena if used correctly. She believes in what she does, fights for what's right, and turns it on when she needs to. That I can get behind.